Hello and welcome to GG Weekend Watch, where we are back once again, and we've moved around the deck chairs a little bit once again, but I am back in the hot seat after another trip away to the Racing League. But thank you so much once again to Dave for holding the fort in my absence, and beyond holding the fort as well, because not only from the presenter stakes but from the pundit stakes as well, Dave, you had a fantastic time with things, because Arrest won as your nap. You also had Witch Hunter. Andrew, though, of course, not to be outdone. Desperate Hero then for Andrew. So I'm delighted to say that I have both Dave and Andrew back with me in the punditry role, though, this week, where we will be looking ahead to the final day of York's Ebor Festival, as well as a couple of other contests from Goodwood for good measure. So that's great to be back with you. And we will kick on with the action, because we begin with the Group 3 Strensel Stakes for the 3-year-olds and over a mile 1 at 150, where Nostrum is back out again after his disappointing effort last time out. He heads away as the 6-4 market leader. But Andrew, your old mate is in here, Jimi Hendrix. I say mate, probably more menace, to be honest. Dare you side with him again? And can you kick us off, please?
Yeah, he would have been known as Sir James Hendricks had he actually ever won a race when I backed him. Yeah, it's bane of my life after that Royal Ascot win. So I napped him for that race last year, and then of course switched allegiance to Sonny Liston this time around. He got done by the stablemate on the other side of the track. So yeah, I mean, he's then for a really good race, hasn't he, behind Master of the Sea, when you know, in Group 2 company, perhaps not suited by the tempo of that race necessarily. And yeah, difficult to get a handle on. Really, I'm not sort of usually keen on punting him in this race. It's a bit of a funny race, this one, isn't it? You sort of start looking at him and think, oh, I don't fancy that. I can pick holes in that one, and then you realise you're at the end of the field, and you've only got 6 runners. So yeah, Nostrum got chinned by Epic Taters, which means a really good roast potatoes. And a Goodwood last time. That one runs on the card later on at Goodwood as well. But yeah, I'm not convinced about anything. It's very hard to make a case for anything with the Stout Yard at the moment, really. It's not a stable I particularly want to have on side. They seem to go off short. They often get chinned at short prices. I mean, the only time he's beaten previously behind Chillhi, and he did bounce back and win it the next time of asking. Would it surprise me if he bounced back to win this? Not particularly. He seems to handle pretty much any going, doesn't he? Having won on Good to Firm, and finished run respectably enough on soft last time. So assuming it still stays dry, he's probably going to run his race. But yeah, I'm kind of. I think I'd probably go El Drama if I was going to have a bet in the race, given that he seemed to improve with the switch to Carl Yard when going down narrowly to LRC at Haydock last time out. Clocked an RPR of 115. That was the best he'd recorded for a while for Roger Varian previously. And yeah, I'll go El Drama, but wouldn't be particularly confident.
So you sounded very convincing with that. But it is one of those races, isn't it, where question marks over all of these, and then you try and find a solid play, and there just isn't really that one. So El Drama, perhaps that on just his second start for Carl Burke after previously being based with Roger Varian. Dave, any stronger opinions on this first race?
No, felt the same as Andrew as well, to be honest. It's almost like a default pick for Nostrum, because he definitely deserves to be favourite. You'd have to be a bit forgiving for that Goodwood run, but I'd write off a lot of those races because the ground was terrible. And even what the official going descriptions have been published as, I'd still be dubious about those as well. So we can forgive that run. Andrew did touch on it before, like the run behind Chaldine last year. The form of that is pants now. And even when you go back to when Nostrum beat Holloway Boy, Victory Dance, and then there was a 200-1 poke in there. None of those have come out and done anything since. So his form is questionable. So whether he's actually 114 rated or not, I don't think he probably is. But because he is a 3-year-old, he's getting a bit of a weight in here. Even if we were brutal and say, right, half a stone off for you because we don't think you're as good as we say you are, he still comes out on top. He's about the right sort of price. So you'd almost make him a coin flip when you just say, like, he could be good enough, he might not be. So it wouldn't be a strong opinion in the race. He is the right favourite. I definitely wouldn't want to be laying him, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to back him. So I'd rather bet someone in a coin flip, I think. But Nostrum will probably win, but I couldn't go through the rest of the field and make a case for anything else. So deserve to be favourite, but probably priced accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect summary of that race. And you've both just made very similar points then on York's, well, our opener then at York, as we head to Goodwood for the Group 3 Prestige Fillies Stakes for the 2-year-olds over 7 furlongs at 2:05. And the unbeaten Shuwari heads the way here, Dave. But who are you siding with?
I mean, I do like Shuwari, to be honest with you. I've got a bit of a case for a couple of them, but as I started to delve into them, I think I'm quite a positive person anyway. I get really excited when I start looking at a horse's form, trying to find the best of it. But then I always seem to find bits and pieces that just make me go, you're not actually as good as I think you are. So I'll come back to Shuwari at the end, because that is going to be my selection for the race. Carla's Ways had a wind up since her disappointing run at Ascot. The fact that she sported a tongue tie on actual debut as well, and then she had that before, I'd be steering clear of a horse like that, just from a trust perspective. She did beat Star of Mystery on debut, who won the next twice, and wasn't beaten far in Group 2 company last time. That's now rated 102, so her mark could be okay, but it is very much just the trust thing there. Like your wind ups, tongue ties, especially right from the beginning, I'd be concerned whether she's actually going to put it all in. But if she did, and we could trust that, which we have to trust, she's got to have a chance, but priced accordingly. Pretty Crystal steps up in trip here. Would need to bring out some improvement, but I think that probably could do it. Dabawi, for me, has always been a horse that's like, I'd say in and around a mile-ish is where they're going to make their peak. So stepping up from 6 to 7 should help, might need a bit further. And Forever Blue essentially won a match race the last time. So the form doesn't particularly shout out on there, but it was just that single lone run. And it could be the old adage of could be anything type stuff. But Shuwari's form, right? It all feeds through Fallen Angel. That horse is now rated 106. It was behind Shuwari on his prior to that. It was behind Shuwari prior to that with Lady of Leisure. So how Shuwari beat Lady of Leisure. It does come with risk when we do this, right? So when we're reiterating the form, if it's beating a horse and the horse that it's beaten also ran behind that horse. So like I say, the one line between all of them. But Shuwari did stumble a little bit at the start, or dwelt at the start, was a bit, I don't know if she was a bit finicky in the stalls as well. It was on soft ground as well, which I don't think particularly would have suited. She won on good to firm first time up, so she has won on soft, and she ran well on good to firm as well. So I don't think there's any problem with any of the ground conditions. I think the nicer ground will actually see her in better effort, and I do think, as much as we're trusting a lot just through one horse, Fallen Angel, I do think Al Shuwari is the best form play in the race. They have repriced this one up since I managed to look at Final Declaration. She is 5-2, which I think more than fair. Like I say, I'm scared of Carla's Way, because if the breathing stuff does pay dividends, then happy days, but I don't believe it will. So I'm happy to put pretty much a line through there. And then I put a couple of caveats in Pretty Crystal as well. So I do really quite like Shuwari. There's not that much form to go by, but I think she does stand out.
Stands out then Shuwari, 5-2, as you say, to hopefully retain that unbeaten record, 2 from 2 so far for Dave. Andrew.
Yeah, interesting point about the Crisford yard and giving a wind up to Carla's Way. They don't use wind ups very often. I suppose it's because they've got a lot of good horses that are not likely to need them. But they're 6 from 17 with their first time wind up horses for a good profit. And the fillies are 2 from 2. So I mean, if you chuck out the colts and just look at the mares, the geldings, and the fillies, they're 6 from 10 with first time wind ups for a profit of about 15 quid to £1 level stake at SP. I say the 2 fillies, Sun Hat and Another Romance, both won 5-1 and 11-10 on, both on the all weather. So yeah, just quite an interesting angle that maybe she might be worth giving a chance to after that defeat last time out. But yeah, Shuwari is. I was impressed by that debut win, and I don't think the ground was ideal for her. Although she won at Sandown Listed Company next time out, she was still green, I thought, as well. So I thought there was loads more to come from her. And they've got some interesting progressive individuals like Per Contra, the Sangster yard, and I thought Shuwari was the obvious one, really. And you could argue, that were she trained by a bigger yard, she would be a shorter price, and 5-2 or thereabouts is probably a touch of value, even though she is favourite. So I'll go Shuwari over Carla's Way. Just nagging at the back of my mind as those Crisford wind up stats.
Yeah, this is you toying between your usual approaches with the stats and then on the horse that you actually like. So that's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. And good stats, of course, yet again on the wind operation aspect for the Crisford yard from Andrew. Right, it's one of the big ones up now in the form of the Melrose Handicap, a heritage handicap for 3-year-olds over a mile 6 at 225. So the 3-year-old Ebor as wide open as per usual. 6-1 the field with Lordship heading the way, Andrew. It's probably pretty apt. Who are you siding with?
Bless you. Yeah, this is cracking renewal, and of course the interesting angle here is the pace. And 9 of the last 10 winners were described as held up, coming from midfield or further back. Horses who raced prominently or made the running, just 1 from 48 in the last 10 years. That was Ghostwatch in 2018, I think it was, who won off 92 and was up to a mark for something like 106 or 108 later. It was clearly well handicapped. And the software I use gives horses a pace rating, with 12 being the highest and 0 being the lowest. And those who've got a pace rating between 0 and 4 and who were favourite for their latest start have won 5 of the last 10 renewals. And you look at Lordship's running style, everything looks right for him here. I mean, first of all, he's trained by the King of York, William Haggis. He's drawn in stall 2, which, although a high draw hasn't been insurmountable, it certainly helps to be drawn in single figures. And it was favourite last time when coming from off the pace, overcoming a slow start to score at Haydock. So I thought that was a cracking effort on a track that normally favours prominent running styles, and boring though it is, I'm siding with the favourite Lordship here.
Not at all. Not boring when he is coming into the race in that winning sequence. And good case made, 6-1 then heading the way for Andrew. Dave.
Don't let him get away with that. We can't be having favourites in every race. I got to this race.
Hey, you tipped a rest who was a short price favourite last week.
He wasn't.
Don't tell me he was 4-1 at the time you put him on. That price was never there.
Gonna be lambasted now for SP.
But I've said that, and I've put up the favourite in the first 2. So I got to this race, and I definitely had a little bit of a bee in my bonnet, and I was thinking, the poor viewers out there, it can't be favourites every race. But there was 2. Like, it does look a really competitive race. I'm so glad Andrew mentioned about the hold-up tactics of horses, or horses racing towards the rear in this, because Middle Earth was the one that I wanted to make the strongest case for. Now, when Oisin Murphy rode this horse on debut, he jumped off the last twice, which I potentially read into more than I should be reading into, but I find it interesting. He's ridden a horse that's been run pretty well, to be fair. A couple of times he jumps off of it. The old 3 run, get a mark, 1 and a handicap type thing. But Oisin basically rode this horse and held him up at the back. I thought it was a pretty decent run. I've got some little information on that as well. The couple of rides after, they have been further forward with the horse, but he's been progressive with his RPR. So that run with the first time out was 82, jumps up to 89 after that, then 95. And I do think that going back to those more patient tactics will suit. He's been stepping up in trip with each run as well. Roaring Lion, he's bred to want this sort of trip and probably even a little bit more as well. So I'm surprised that he was as big a price as he was. He was well beaten on that first run. It was on good to firm ground. The winner was beaten in a handicap next time out off a £1 lower than Middle Earth runs today, right? So that's not exactly the best starting argument when we're looking at weights and handicap stuff. But when he did step up in trip, he looked better. Admittedly, it was under Kieran Fallon. And when he won last time, when I said about the last horse getting a bit finicky in the stalls, this is a horse I remember proper getting unruly in the stalls, panicked and everything in there. I like the attitude with the fact that he toughed it out in the finish in that race, especially after doing those things before, because you never know how much it might take out of the horse at the start. Like I touched on, the Racing Post ratings have been climbing in each of those runs. Handicap debut, I reckon that's a little bit by design. 10-1, I think he still is about that now. Is just a stupidly big price. We have only got 13 runners in here, but because obviously it is such a special race being a heritage handicap, loads of bookmakers are paying 4 places as well. I cannot possibly see this horse outside the first 4. So I do really fancy Middle Earth. Denmark was the other one that I was desperate to try and make some sort of case for him. But he does go further forward, doesn't he? And I don't know how to make a case for him. He, like, at the mark that he's off, just looked too high for what he's done. Ryan Moore is back on now. I think Wayne Lorden rode him the last time, and then Ryan Moore was on something else that just didn't run very well. I don't know. He looks really unruly though, because he chucked his jockey off first time off when he ran. Then he ran over in France and he was barging into horses. He's one of those horses that I don't know. One of these days he's going to put it all together. It's an O'Brien runner in a handicap first time out, and it just makes me think he's 8-1. Like, am I going to be ruin the fact that I've not done anything on him? But I will not be back in Denmark. Middle Earth, I think I can make a strong enough case to say that I reckon he'll win. But like I say, those each way terms are tempting if you want to play him safe. But Middle Earth for me will win the Melrose.
Will win. Like it a lot. And I like the geographical angles you were taking into this. Do you know why Middle Earth, why that's a clever name for this colt as judged on his pedigree? I want to see just how much of a nerd you are.
I mean,
is this a Lord of the Rings reference or a Hobbit?
It is a Lord of the Rings reference. Can you get it though? You're both disappointing me on your nerd level.
I've just switched out to a completely different race. So where were we again with the Melrose, weren't we?
Middle Earth. Why that pedigree? Is that a clever name? Or what's the theme that's going through here? I mean, you've got the theme.
Oh, you've got Rohan, as in Riders of Rohan.
Rohan was the horse that was given to Aragorn in Lord of the Rings.
Right. It was Riders of Rohan, wasn't it? Not Rohan.
Yes, Riders of Rohan. So Rohan's not featuring in here, but I mean, that would be something if they ever met.
And can you name Gandalf's horse for 2 extra points?
Yes, of course, Shadowfax.
Yeah.
Who is kind of a bit of a wasted name. At least they've got it for a grey horse, but it's not quite the horse you would want to have a name like that, because it's a class name. But right, nerd session over for that point, because I'm going to add in an extra tip that I have no idea if it's got any link to anything nerdy, to be fair. Because Dave, you say that we've gone for a favourite and a middle ground kind of horse, 10 to 1, a very fair price about Middle Earth. Well, I will then restore the order by siding with the outsider of the field here, and that is Chillhi, who just needs this trip badly. I mean, he faced a mile 6 for the first and the only time on his penultimate start, when 5th at Haydock in a good Class 2 handicap, which was a strong 3-year-old handicap as well. That was also running a really decent time. I liked that form at the time. Now, admittedly, Chillhi, he didn't really travel all that well through that race, which obviously is a concern. When you go to a track like York, traveling through your contest and getting into that rhythm is just as important as anything else, especially at that track. And he did get hampered early though there, admittedly, before staying on inside the final furlong. Then he dropped back in trip last time out off of that same mark. He became again outpaced just at a crucial time at Newcastle before he rallied to only be beaten just under 2 lengths against some good older horses. Now, I don't think that was any disgrace. So off of the £2 lower mark, I don't think he should be the outsider of the field with no trip issues whatsoever. And more importantly, he's a horse where he likes to come from off of the pace. So I'm pleased about those running tactics. He was almost sent off as favourite last time out at 2 to 1 to sort of try and side with Andrew's stats there. But as I say, the outsider of the field for me, Chillhi, is the way I'm going to go at 25 to 1 as we head back to Goodwood now for the Group 2 Celebration Mile Stakes for the 3-year-olds and over a mile at 2:40. We have co-favourites of 3 here: Aldari, Charon, Epictetus, the aforementioned best roast dinner horse, all vying for favouritism. So Dave, who wins it?
This was a sad race to start to look at, because you'd have been on a show before where I liked Aldari. Even the week before when I hosted, I liked Aldari. There's the voice in the back of my head that says, well, I mean, he's going to win a race at some point, surely. But I just don't understand what component is missing for him to show more than he's been currently showing. So basically, my mindset at the start of this was, let's let him be shortish and then let's take him on. Let's try and find something else. I don't think he's going to be that short. Like you mentioned, it's co-favourites of 3. Something in there, like the market's going to move about a bit with a few of them. So there could be market confidence behind him. If he was to drift out and get to like a bit of a stupid price, I don't know, say like he's a 6 to 1 poke, something like that, it's not going to happen, but I would probably have some sort of play on him. It's worth saying that, but that is much more my lemming mentality than actually. One I think I can make a bit of a case for, though, is Angel Blur. I think that's the way we're going to say Angel Blur this time around.
Forever now, yeah.
It's a good way.
So, like Holquin was an interesting one for the trip at the first time. Fairly consistent over 7 furlong on various grounds, but the line that kept staring in my face with this horse, and I wasn't going to make a strong case for that one, but like the horse, was his next second behind Angel Blur when he was in receipt of £12. So he's £6 worse off now. And I know there's a year difference between the horse, but I thought, can I try and make a case that he's bridged that gap and some now? And simply put, I can't. So I cannot fathom how he's going to do anything without £6 difference in there. So then it made me think, actually, I might boost Angel Blur's chances off the back of that. Now, he was unlucky on his penultimate start with trouble in running. And I thought that last time out back at Ascot, because I tipped him up then, he wasn't given the best chance. But that was after a slow start. And to me, it just looked like he was never at the races. There was a few rides at Royal Ascot where I feel like some jockeys were just out the back, and then they just, for whatever reason, pace or position, just thought, I'm not going to flog my horse here. And that felt like that type of ride. Definitely a hit and miss horse, because I've talked about there, like potentially you can look in running in a few races. But if you go back to his Goodwood run behind Baid, that was last July, a long time ago, I know. He did beat Chindit when he finished lame. And I know Chindit didn't run that well last week, but he ran okay. It's maybe not the best line of form, but I think that's fairly good for this particular track. So I'm happy with like the track complexion, all that sort of stuff. And like I said, I do think those last couple of runs, we could forgive the penultimate one. And I do think that last line, if you go back and watch it, like they were never trying to do anything with Angel Blur. Little bit of a break since that run as well. And again, I'm clutching a little bit here, but back in 2021, he won a couple of Group 1s off the back of a small break. That break came off the back of a win at this track. So like I said, like Goodwood's not a problem for me at all. Certainly still capable in Group 2 company. It's the type of horse that if they drop back to a Group 3 would just be a stupidly short price you could smash up. Then we could still get 10 to 1 about him in this company. And I think that's decent. We might need a little bit of luck just because the horse goes in and out, but it's dead 8 at the moment, right? It's ripe for a scummy each way bet, or even just to smash him in the place market. But again, I've said this before with horses that I would put up as like the place terms or like an each way type of horse. I would never suggest it if I didn't think they could win the race, and I absolutely think that Angel Blur could go and win this. So I'm more than happy with a price of 10 to 1. It's another one of those just from like a pricey reference. If this horse was to shorten up to be like a 6 to 1 boat, I would be still tempted to back it, but I wouldn't be looking at the each way angle. But yeah, Angel Blur, I actually think I quite like it, but watch Aldari go and mug me right off.
I was going to say, away from the lemming mentality now with Aldari. Oh, you just know what's going to happen, as Andrew will vouch for you for Jimi Hendrix, as aforementioned. So cue those two in a double from what we're going to do. But Angel Blah, it is, though. Don't ever crab us for our pronunciations. We nail every single one. Andrew.
Yeah, tricky one. This I'm drawn to Knight, the Chris's runner, who's the outsider of the field, around about 20 to 1. I actually wrote him up and put him on my tracker after that 18-length 7th to Isaac Shelby in the green, and that sounds like a terrible run. But he was drawn high, he raced towards the stand-side rail, massive bias. You had to be drawn low down the middle of the track at Newbury that day. And I wanted to be with him next time out, and I was waiting. We didn't see him for the best part of 4 months. He had a few entries, didn't take them up. And then he turned up post-gelding behind Epictetus at the glorious Goodwood, of course, or the Qatar Goodwood Festival, or whatever they're calling it nowadays. And he ran. I put him up as a bet that day, and he ran well. He was only beaten sort of 2 3/4 lengths as an 18 to 1 shot. And perhaps, first run since gelding, first run for several months, perhaps that was needed. Now, obviously, it's a case of the ground. I think there's a little bit of rain forecast. It's good. Goodwood would like to stick loads of water on. Will it be soft enough for him? You assume he's going to be pulled out if they don't think it's going to be suitable. So I'm going to have to go with Knight here, for that reason. I mean, you compare him to something like, he's a bigger price than Holguin, the Andrew Baldwin runner, who races freely over sort of 6 and 7 furlongs. You think surely he's not going to stay a mile. So it looks a bit of value, certainly in relation to that one. Epictetus, suited by soft ground when winning at glorious Goodwood. Will it be too quick for him? Very much so. Aldari wouldn't surprise me if he bounced back, but how many chances do you give him? So yeah, I've got to go for the price and go for Knight.
Knight 20 to 1 as the outsider of the field. I sided with him in the Greenham, and I was so disappointed with him. So I'm glad that you've made a case for that excuse. And like I say, then it took us an age to see him. And I thought last time out, for a few strides, I thought, oh God, he's going to come and mug me off now completely at 18 to 1 and go and win at Goodwood in the Group 3. But yeah, he has been readily forgotten about, though, all the same as the outsider of the field. Knight, then, it is for Andrew. Now, one of my favourite races of the season now, it's the Group 2 City of York Stakes for the 3-year-olds and over 7 furlongs at 3 o'clock back at York. Hopefully in the next few years, they will get that Group 1 status that they are vying for this race, because I love my 7 furlong contest. And we have the trip specialist himself, Kinross, back to win this race again. So, Andrew, can he do just that?
Very possibly. He's an absolute superstar, isn't he? And the general consensus is that he needs soft ground, but it's more a case of he needs 7 furlongs. And if you could choose the ground, you'd say sort of good to soft in places or something like that. But he won this on a quick surface last year, beating Sundering into second. And you look at the Breeders' Cup run over a mile on rock hard ground in the States, and he's only just got chinned in third. So I wouldn't worry too much. I think he'll probably just about go and win. I thought the value might be trying to find something to finish second to him at a big price in the computer straight forecast or the Tote Exacta. You've got Sondrine, who's been very disappointing this season, but has got plenty of form with Kinross in the past, and finishing third in this race last year when a 5-1 shot is now 40-1. And of course, our old front-running friend Pogo, who was second in this race last year, and has got some good form at York to his name. So I've not done the pace map yet and seen exactly how the race is going to pan out. But if it looks like Pogo could be in receipt of an easy lead, then maybe the Kinross Pogo forecast could be the way to go. But I'll go Kinross.
That was the way I was looking with the Kinross Pogo forecast, where I don't think that they're going to be putting much. I know that we're due the rain tomorrow on Friday up at York, but I'm still hoping for quick enough conditions for Pogo, because I think he was outdone just 7 days ago by the softer ground, and he has been pretty dismissed in the market. We love him though. He loves this course and this trip, of course, but Kinross though also for me for the win back over this course and distance again, because he's just the best horse at 7 furlongs, and again he confirmed that last time out. So we are both thinking along the same lines, I'm glad to say. Andrew and I, Dave, where are you thinking?
Yeah, so like Kinross is the one, and you were talking about like the quality and caliber of this race. Like it's gone from, I think it was given Group 3 status maybe in like 2016, and then 2019 they whacked it up to a Group 2 just because of the quality of horses that are winning it. I'm pretty well, depends in the depth, isn't it? But like this will probably, I say probably, this will definitely be a Group 1 in like times to come. It's like it's a proper class race. Kinross obviously is the class angle in there. He does improve his run as well. I didn't like the last win. Like I didn't back him. I know there was plenty of people that were keen on him. I know he got the job done and he did go and win. And like I say, he's probably going to step forward for that. But I don't know. There's something about it that just made me feel like I wouldn't want to be wading into him at a short price. He's again the same as the first race. I think he's just the right price. So he wouldn't be one that I'd want to be laying. Definitely wouldn't want to be one that I'd be wanting to get into either. I felt like I wanted to try and find a couple to take on at prices, because there's not extended each way terms with all the bookies on this one. We might get it with a few. There is a chance that there might be some betting without Kinross markets as well. So Andrew's already talked about a couple of orders at bigger prices. Audience was one that ran last week behind him, and I feel like that run was like potential possible bounce. I've talked about bounce before. I like to just clutch things out thin air, don't I? But one well off of a nice break, then came back, and then like second run after that break, I would like to say that it wasn't as bad as it probably first looked. Ground was likely worse than the description too on that way. So I'm forgiving enough to say that I think Audience now is a bit overpriced. So he's one that I would be looking at to try and take on with, like to take Kinross on with. The other one that I was looking at as well was Jumbie. I feel like Jumbie's another one that a big price, and again the drying ground. I think when I made a case for him last week in the Chindit race, I was saying that the conditions were going against him. I don't think he was really given an effort last time out. I feel like they were probably just looking at the ground and maybe weren't going to run him. He was only a length behind Kinross 12 months ago. Daniel Tudhope's riding with loads of confidence at the moment, and the last time Danny Tudhope rode for Charles Hills was a winning one. So 100% strike rate in the last few weeks for jockey and trainer combination. So I'll play them two against the prices. The one caveat that I will put with that is this is a class race, like we say. It is getting better and better in terms of status. And I look back a little while, I don't think there's been a double figure price winner of this race, well, since like records began that I can look at. And I think the biggest price winner we had was 9-1 in 2017. So I'm probably just being stupid going against Kinross, but I'll play them two each way, Audience and Jumbie.
We like alternative views, especially when the pair of us have already sided with the 13-8 market leader, Dave. So no, we always welcome that. And yeah, we are also advocating for the City of York to become a Group 1. So if you need any extra help advertising that or pushing for that agenda, we are your people for that. Now, it is the main event itself. It's the Ebor Heritage Handicap for 4-year-olds and over a mile 6 at 3:35 up at York. Sweet William was given the green light by his owner, Philippa Cooper, most likely to the delight of John and Thady Gosden, as well as anti-post punters on him. He is the 4-1 market leader. But Dave, who did you come down on the side of for the Ebor?
We need to review the last selection, because I wrote Jumbie on my notes, but I was talking about Pogo. Danny Tudhope in it. So when we do the
I
overlays,
think for a second, I was like, did I tune out for a second, or are we suddenly Charlie Hills and Danny Tudhope? I did think I'd missed something for a second.
no, it's definitely Pogo, because I remember they were talking to the connections as well before the race went there. He ran behind Wickland. It's definitely Pogo for the previous race. Anyway, on to the Ebor. I think I forced myself into a mentality early on when we were talking about the favourite side of it. This race, right, the Ebor, I love it as a race. I always feel like we're getting like the stay-in type trips on the flat makes me feel a little bit closer to the National Hunt routes. And I always struggle with this race because I feel like these big handicaps, especially over the trip, the market tends to not necessarily lure you in, but the market looks about right. So you can make the strongest cases for those that are ahead of the market. But obviously in the game of trying to find a bit of value, just because they got the best chance doesn't mean that they're necessarily ones we want to get stuck in with. Sweet William was clearly very impressive at Goodwood. I tipped up the second that day. I still thought I had a bit of a chance, but he wandered about and won comfortably. £4 well in. Ideally, like, you just think like he just wins, just move on, don't do anything else. But it is a big race handicap, isn't it? Absurd's the other one that was behind Vauban. I mean, that form could just look red hot because it's Vauban, couldn't it? And I think he's definitely worth mentioning, especially now Frankie's on board. But I don't like it with this race when I get stuck in there. Like I say, I look at towards the head of the market. The cases are obvious for everyone out there. That is not what the viewers want. So I am going to take an absolute wild swing on a lucky outsider. But I think I can make a bit of a case as well, to be honest with you. The lucky horse that has got my wild swing is Berkshire Rocco.
Oh, I did not expect that then.
So let me go off on a tangent here. I will try and be as concise as I can, but I've had all sorts of tangents before. So way back when they first tried cheek pieces on this horse, he was absolutely woeful. So woeful that they gave him the wind up and the chop. So I would say that we don't really trust that as first time cheek pieces because circumstances have changed since. Couple of runs after that, he had a bit of a break. They tried the cheap pieces again. And because of those couple of runs and after the break, I would argue that was the technical, like, first time by design, although it was second time. And he won a Class 2 event. So albeit that was over 2 miles, maybe he does one a little bit further. That was with an RPR of 107, and he retained his official rating of 101, which was just given outside of Handicap Company. Ran first time in Handicap Company, and he was sent off 5-1 favourite. That was in the Howden. And the winner that day was HMS President. And that's in the horse that's in this race as well. So bear with me, I will get round to it. That day, HMS President was in receipt of £7. Now that winner gives Rocco £6. So he's the best part of a stone better off. The runner-up that day was also in receipt, was in receipt of £13. And that was Adjuvant that I talked about behind Sweet William. Ran a decent race there. So he's officially rated the same as Rocco's. That's another £13 swing in essence, right? So again, bear with me. But I think there's a lot of swings with Berkshire Rocco, but I think there's some perks to say that he could be back to a bit of form. Struggled over 1 mile for 1 mile 6 since that handicap, but one of them was against Vauban, so there's not many horses that would be able to go the clip that he was going in there. And then the last time it was back at Newmarket, which is where he came unstuck on that Howden handicap. So it could just be he didn't really like Newmarket. Last time out, though, that run behind the Very Man, there was a lot of talk on the old Twitsphere from a couple of people that were basically saying anything odds against on the Very Man was just a shoe-in. Like, the horse was there to be backed and to go and win, and he did win like a good thing. Big field form is a worry with Berkshire Rocco, but he sported a first-time visor here, right? So that could be enough to make a bit of a difference. And given the fact that he's a 40-1 poke, they don't take much persuasion for me. They've got Callum Hutchinson on taking £3 off. So I talked about that weight swing as well. He's probably over a stone better off now than when he was favourite in the Howden. Snuck in here at number 21, so got in down the bottom. So there's loads of places up for grabs. He is 40-1. I'm going to take a swing on Berkshire Rocco.
40-1, first time visor, Andrew Balding, Callum Hutchinson, £3 claim off the back. Good case made. Intertwining form lines therefore. Very well done, Dave. I hope it comes off for you now on the back of that. Nicely done. Andrew, match that.
It's a crap race, isn't it, the Ebor?
Thanks, Andrew.
Not just
for all of that, and then
not just this one, but you look at it. There's so many horses here that are massively on the downgrade, and that they're just, they're in it because they can run in it because it's worth a lot of money and they've got a high handicap mark. Because they've been sort of like hunting around the back of the field in, group races like, Enemy and, Wiki Wheels and Young and Glen, good old boys, but perhaps not the top of the game. Tashkhan hasn't won for a million years. And, there aren't many progressive up and coming sorts in the race. And yeah, it's just I don't think the race kind of works really in what they're intending. I mean, Sweet William been very impressive. I'm pleased that he's got in the race, and I'm pleased that they've stuck with Rab Havlin as well, because he gets a lot of grief, doesn't he? And from the keyboard warriors. And but I don't think the ground was ideal for him at Goodwood. He still won quite comfortably. The argument is that was his sort of third race within a week, within a month, beg your pardon, and it might have taken its toll. But I think he will run a good race here. I think he's a fair favourite. Absurd's in stall 24. That wouldn't have been ideal, but he looks one of the obvious ones as well. And Live Your Dream has to be of interest, having won very easily at Newmarket last time. Saeed bin Sarour does really well with his older handicappers. You can just back all the 4-year-olds and older and handicaps in Britain. You make a very good profit over the years. Obviously this one adding to those gains last time out. So again, you kind of like, because you've got a lot of dead wood in the race, which sounds ridiculous given that it's 300 grand to the winner. It's not as competitive perhaps as the 24 runner lineup suggests. So of the ones I've mentioned, I'll probably go Live Your Dream because he's the biggest price. But I was half interested in Get Shirty for David O'Mara, coming out of stall 23, but of course ran in this race last year from stall 24, and ran an extremely good race, finishing 5th to Trawlerman. Has anyone heard of that one since winning this race last year? And so yeah, I mean he came from off the pace that day. It is a strong gallop. Not impossible to see Get Shirty, even though I think 3 of his last 4 wins have come on soft ground. It was good to firm last year. I thought Get Shirty could run a race for David O'Mara. So yeah, that would be the one at a big price that I'd be interested in backing each way with extra places. But I'll go Live Your Dream for a race that does not float my boat.
No, like you say, there is a lot of horses that you wouldn't say there's too many of those that have much more mileage to be able to go off in this race, is it? But 33 to 1, they're about Get Shirty with the R in there. But as you say, the main player in terms of a selection is also my selection, which I'm delighted about, which is Live Your Dream. Because, Andrew, as you say, when you talk about sort of a lack of strength and depth, which sounds bizarre to say about a race such as the Ebor, very often in those instances, looking towards the class horses at the top of the weights is the way to go. He is the #1 horse in here as well. And of course, I respect Sweet William. He does look the proverbial group horse in a handicap. However, he hasn't escaped anyone's attention on that basis, and he still remains that awkward type anyway. And I would still probably want bigger in a race of this nature about him anyway. So instead, I will be backing Live Your Dream for Saeed bin Sarour and Isheen Murphy, a very smart horse, as we know, and what has just been a bit of a truncated career. But even despite that, rarely has he run a bad race. Now, he missed all of last year, but he returned even better than ever this campaign, second on his return from that big absence, behind the solid cumulonimbus. Trying by the end of the season, I'll be able to pronounce that horse's name very fluently. But he's had a great season anyway, that horse. And then he was third in the blisteringly run Duke of Edinburgh, where he did well, given that he was ridden prominently and clearly did best of those who were up with the pace. And then he got his rewards last time out, winning at Newmarket in a Heritage Handicap, winning it for the second time. £5 rise is fine, as judged on that run. Trip is fine. Big Field Handicap, fine. And he's just a very smart type. So at 9 to 1, he looks a very viable price for me as well. Live Your Dream. And now our final race to preview is the Constantine Handicap, another Heritage Handicap for 3-year-olds and over 6 furlongs at 4:10. Wide open race. So many of our favourites in here, including Summergand after his narrow defeat just 7 days ago. He's joint favourite with Aberama Gold, Andrew's best mate, as we know. So, Andrew, are you sticking with your new best pal?
No, I'm deserting him. I'm very fickle, as you've probably discovered over the years. But yeah, I tipped Summergand in Racing and Football Outlook earlier this week, runner-up in the Great St Wilfrid last time out, and when the winner Sophia Starlight got first run. And because Summergand, we know he's something like 5 from 10 in the month of August, thrives at this time of year. Coming out of stall 20, I mean, from what we've seen so far on the first couple of days at York, I don't think it really matters. It's going to matter where you're drawn. He won this race last year, of course, so I thought he had an obvious chance. Mr. Wagyu, I think we're sort of past his peak period now, so I'd want to take him on. I think the big board will bounce back at some point. very much sort of binary form figures there, 1-0, 1-1-0, and I think there's more wins to come from Richard Hannon's 3-year-old. I think York will suit him given his prominent style. Mondamage is running again after, but yeah, he seems to be on the downgrade. So yeah, it's I think really it's between Summergand and Aberama Gold, and but I'll just favour Summergand.
Don't let sentiment get in the way. Aberama Gold has done you a turn on those last 2 starts, deserting him now for dear-old Summergand, now a 9-year-old, to hopefully go one better than 7 days for 8-1 for Andrew. Dave.
Yeah, it does look a pretty good race. This wouldn't typically be my type of bag because it almost goes against my intuition. You do, well, I don't know whether historically in this race it pans out, but like we've seen with Aberama Gold, when you get one of these summer horses that's in good form, the hike in the weights doesn't really seem to make any difference, especially over this sort of trip. So probably should be sticking towards the head of the market and looking at those two, but I really don't want to. So I decided to go diving further down the fields because this is like a proper Saturday classic punting. There are so many big fields, really competitive racing. There are some favourites that are priced about the price they should be, but I do feel like we're going to have to take a couple of swings on some races. So I've taken another swing. And this one, I feel like I'm going to just get poo-poo because of the jockey, but that's not the sole reason why I've gone for the horse. But I've gone for Eraz. I think that's the way we're going to say it. The only handicap debutant in here. I know Andrew touched on the draw. It doesn't really matter where we've been, and I think in terms of like the way that they're priced and then the chances, and how many winners we get out of it over the years, doesn't make too much difference. But I would probably not prefer to be drawn high, but it doesn't really matter. I don't think, I mean, the only thing with the draw, right, is it might hold a bit of a price because I think some people do get latched onto it, but unless it goes the other way, we get winners from the high point, it won't make a difference. Anywho, waffling a little bit on there. Eraz is a 16-1 poke, right? Ryan Moore takes the ride, which can only ever be seen as a positive. I don't think he just rides horses for the sake of riding horses. The horse's last 3 runs since he's been gelded, a lot of them are getting the chop recently, haven't they? They came on heavy ground, good to soft, which was first time blinkered, and then soft. They were all class 1s though, and the Racing Post ratings on average are fairly close to his official mark of 105. So like I say, handicap debut, I think he's marked okay. I would definitely argue that this horse wants quicker ground though. So I touched on those 3 runs since being gelded. I know he's obviously run before and that's where he's got his mark, but again, it's the little get a few runs into him before you're going to go to a handicap. I do think the horse wants quicker ground. He may concentrate a little bit better. Obviously, like I touched on, he's got blinkers, so might not be the most straightforward. But I think he might concentrate better in this type of race, like a fast and furious, hustly-bustly handicap. Maybe that little bit of ferocity in his head that requires the blinkers means that he's going to eke a little bit more out of him. Steps down in class as well, which is always going to be another positive. He was poor in the 2021 in the Acomb back here, so that does temper enthusiasm. But I'll forgive any horse 1 run. And I do think that York's maybe the type of place that you're probably going to benefit from having some experience here regardless. He is a bit older now, a bit wiser. I've already touched on he's had the chop. So hopefully he's beginning to concentrate a bit more now. Ryan Moore being on board. So unless these two just don't get on, I think he could eke out a little bit more out of him. That's not to say that Crowley's not getting the best, but it's a different jockey. Sometimes horses like that. And I think 16-1 is a fair enough price to take a bit of a punt on him where there's going to be a minimum of 5 places being paid by the punters. So probably going against my better judgment that you probably should stick towards the ones in form, but Eraz, I think I'll take a swing on.
Harry Brooking it now. Eraz, though, going for the 6s is Dave. 16-1 then about Eraz in our concluding race at York. Now, all that is left for me to do is to get your naps, lads. So, Andrew, you're up. Your nap, please. You get first stab.
I'll go for the Melrose pick, Lordship, a good statistical pick for that race.
Lordship for his lordship, right, for the nap. Dave.
I mean, it's going to have to happen. I was tempted to nap Shuwari, but what Andrew said about Carla's Way and the Windoppy stuff scared me because I was like, not ruling her out because of that, but it scares me. So I wanted to really go for my Middle Earth in the Melrose. So it's a head-to-head again. It was me versus Matty last week. It's me versus Andrew. Middle Earth will win the Melrose.
Right. Yeah, because Matt's been sacked after losing that battle, so there'll only be one of us returning next week.
We're all unbelievably cutthroat on this show. Exactly that. Right. Middle Earth it is, though, for the Lord of the Rings fans. And I'm going to go, I'm just going to play it with a straight bat. For 2 cricket references in as many sentences. Kinross, I'm going to go for in the 3 o'clock in the city of York, and just play it safe. But that is everything from us on this week's show. A big thank you to Dave and to Andrew for all of their hard work as per usual. A big thank you to you for watching, and best of luck for your bets this weekend.